Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I realize each time I start one of these things, the whole thing sways from side to side because my phone is on top of the tripod. I should use the little remote control, but it never quite worked. I'm in my study and I'm looking through some shelves that I haven't kind of organized much recently and seeing what's here, seeing if there's anything I can actually clear out, see if there's any surprises. Um, we'll see. Maybe it's all a bit dusty. Right. Oh, here's something straight away I can never chuck out. These are all lying flat, these books, because they're oversized. There's picture books and all sorts down here. This is Kate DiCamillo, The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane. And I got a really nice copy at some point. She's an interesting writer for kids, I think. What else did she do? It was The Tale of Despero she did. But this is yet another story about toys coming to life and having souls and having adventures. A whole kind of subgenre of books that I really like. There must be something very deep rooted about that psychologically. The classic, of course, is The Velveteen Rabbit, and I've got a really nice copy of that somewhere. Can't find it now. I'm gonna end up squashing the cat, aren't I? Socks is down here on the chair, cleaning himself. See, the whole room is in upheaval because of because of pulling these bookcases out, and yes, it's going to be a right mess, and I'll never get out in time for lunchtime. I'll never get out of the room again. This is a book about underground Manchester, about the hidden uh, labyrinth underneath the city. I always thought I would write something about that. I remember having a kind of murder mystery in mind to do with that, so that has to stay on the shelf. Here's a, a Roald Dahl that was redone in recent years with Quentin Blake drawings. I think it was the last of the books by Dahl that Blake had to illustrate. It was kind of disappointing because the pictures are in black and white, so it's slightly. They did really lovely editions of these with color pictures. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure if it's something a treasure really. Here's the uh, from the Picasso Museum in Paris. The the guidebook that you have to buy from this fantastic museum in the middle of Paris. This is the one. This is the museum that focuses on the second half of his life, I think, from what I remember, and it's full of statues. It has a lovely garden and a cafe on the roof. That statue looks like the wooden robot I bought at that car boot sale last year. I don't know if I've talked about the wooden robot yet. I must do. I must talk about him. What's this? Venice. See these large format books, and they're gathering dust under here, which is annoying. I need to get them out. I need to kind of shift the books around a bit so they all get looked at. Something has collapsed downstairs. Jeremy must be tidying as well. Yeah, this is slightly serious and old-fashioned, but it's got some nice enough pictures. Fascinated by Venice, of course. 2 volumes of Edward Gorey cartoons, Amphigory and Amphigory 2. These were the ones that pulled together a number of his books uh, into these kind of bumper volumes. They're kind of not that attractive as collections, but they do the job. They've got a lot of stuff in if you're a fan of Edward Gorey, which I am. Mr. Earbrass. writes a novel, or The Unstrung Harp is the classic, and I need really to have a separate edition of this. It was one of Mr. Earbrass's better days. He wrote for so long and with such intensity that when he stopped, he felt quite sick. Having leaned out the window into a strong wind for several minutes, he is now restoring himself in the kitchen and reading The Unstrung Harp. As far as he has gotten, he cannot help feel that Lerp's return and almost immediate impalement on the bottle tree was one of his better ideas. The jelly in his sandwich is about to get all over his fingers. That's amazing timing. This morning I was writing. I wrote 1,000 words on my own personal unstrung harp today, and I did get apricot jam on the keyboard and on the cat, as it happened. It's this very fancy apricot jam with whole apricots in it that came from Venus Foods down the road. And there's bits of apricot jam everywhere, which makes me feel like Paddington or Mr. Earbrass. Mr. Earbrass has finished chapter 7, and it is obvious that before plunging ahead, he's got to decide where the plot is to go and what will happen to it on arrival. He is engaged in making diagrams and possible routes and destinations, and wishing he had not dealt so summarily with Lerp, who would have been useful for taking retributive measures at the end of part 3. At the moment, there is no other character capable of them. I love Mr. Earbrass. Out for a short drive, before a supper of oysters and trifle, Mr. Earbrass stops near the abandoned fireworks factory outside something awful. There is a drowned sort of yellow light in the west, and the impression of desolation and melancholy is remarkable. Mr. Earbrass jots down a few visual notes and suspects may be useful when he reaches the point where the action in The Unstrung Harp shifts to Hangdog Hall. It's just, the drawings are really hard to show. You can see them there. This is Gory's best book, and it's the one with the most text, which makes you wish that he'd written more books that were more wordy. I've lost all my words today, I'm sorry. Mr. Earbrass has driven over to Nether Millstone in search of forced green gauges, but has been distracted by a bookseller's. Rummaging among mostly religious tracts and privately printed reminiscences, he has come across The Meaning of the House, his own second novel. In making sure that it has not got there by mistake, as he would hardly care to pay more for it, he discovers it is a presentation copy. For Angus. Will you ever forget the bloaters? Bloaters? Angus? Well, we've all had that feeling when you've found one of your own books in a charity shop. Worse, when you've signed it to someone, and especially if there's a kind of personal message or connection. And I have found myself thinking, well, maybe they're dead, which is a dreadful thing. They can be excused. That's a very dark thought. That's a very Edward Gorey thought. They can be excused for their betrayal if, in fact, they're dead. I am joking, of course. Anyway, this makes me realise I really want a proper copy of Mr. Earbrass. This kind of cheapy version is all right, but it's not good enough. This is his limericks book. A certain young man, it was noted, went about in the heat thickly coated. He said, you may scoff, but I shan't take it off. Underneath, I am horribly bloated. Oh, I'm falling for Edward Gorey again. So that's staying. See, the pile of what's going and what's staying is, the discrepancy is opening up already. And I'm sure Roald Dahl is going to make his way onto the pile of the saved. This is a funny thing, it's a calendar. A page-a-day calendar. with a note from me to Jeremy with a picture of, it's a note apparently from the cat with a drawing of Bernard Socks, and it's a Christmas list of books that Socks thinks Paul might like. I must keep that, that's funny. That's a good tactic. Pretend the cat can write and leave notes. Yeah, this is a funny thing. It's a desk diary, and it's worth keeping because of the Sempe drawings from Nicholas and the Gang, a series of books I read when I was 8 or 9, about French school kids causing chaos by, is it René Goscinny, who wrote Asterix, and illustrated by Sempe, who is one of my favourite artists, cartoonists. The first time I sold a drawing for cash, for 40 quid, I sold a drawing of, I think it was Socks sat in our garden, and I spent it straight away on this huge volume of Sempe drawings. C'est la vie, the world of Sempe. And this is the format you have to enjoy him in, these huge reproductions of quite small, fiddly cartoons. It's a very nice collection. I did promise to keep holding books up to the camera a bit more and not just looking at them myself. You might know him from doing the covers of the New Yorker over the years. He died a year or two ago, but he's somebody whose cartoons I've followed all my life. They're kind of deceptively simple, and that's what I like about them. Look at that, the little kid looking out at the snow. They're kind of gentle but occasionally acerbic, which suits the Nicholas and the Gang books perfectly. So that, I don't know about that. It's nice enough, but it's completely unusable, really, as a book. Not least because the captions are in French. And I'm not good enough to read them. It's going on the questionable pile. So is this ludicrous creativity journal. I bought a whole load of these by different people, thinking they'd be useful because I was going to write some kind of parody, a kind of panda book of creativity. They are such a rip-off, though, when you buy them. They're mostly empty pages. Let your mind float in this big empty space, this empty page. Yeah, this is kind of people taking the piss slightly, I think. And I was longing. Follow your instincts, follow your heart. Follow them both down this empty series of pages. In fact, I think pandas, oh yes. Panda did in fact graffiti these pages. I'd forgotten that. Oh dear. That's quite rude. Maybe I should keep it so I can carry on. I can carry on graffitiing it, or I should donate it so somebody gets it and starts writing mindful and gentle things to themselves, and then one day turns over and finds a horrible message from Panda. That would be quite funny. Right, it's going on the questionable pile. Here's an issue of the Paris magazine published by Shakespeare and Company. God knows when, God knows how this ended up here. There must have been something in it that caught my eye. It's a nicely produced magazine. Very fancy. I can't think what it was that I'd liked about it. It's going on the questionable pile. This is, it looks like a mucky, dirty old item, and it is, but it's from the 50s, and it's a Paul Gallico book. Now, I've talked about Gallico a few times as the author of Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris and the Poseidon Adventure and the Jenny and Thomasina cat books and various other things that I really like. The Small Miracle is one of his kind of slightly sentimental stories, like The Snow Goose. This is the story of St. Francis of Assisi. And it's got these nice 1950s style illustrations. I don't know. There's no way on earth I would part with this, even though it's not a story I'm particularly fond of. But Gallico is somebody I collect, I think. I think it's fair enough to say that. What else? Nick Butterworth, Albert the Blanc, about a French bear. I don't know where this came from or when. A charity shop in recent times. Anything that with the artwork catches my eye, I end up picking up. This is from 2002. Nick Butterworth is a lovely artist, I think. When Albert Leblanc first appeared, sitting all by himself in Mr. Jolly's toy shop, the other toys could only stare. He did look so sad. Poor love, said Sally the hippo. We must try and cheer him up. It's toys again, isn't it? Like that rabbit, that China rabbit. Yeah, quite nice. I think I'm going to make a pile of picture books for my niece, who's 8 soon, and we're going through with presents, and it would be nice to take a pile of picture books for her. This is an issue of Puffin Post from, I guess, the 80s, this one. Oh no, it's not. Oh no, hang on. Oh, you can't see the date. That's very annoying. It looks like, 82. And on the back, it's got the puffins that were out in spring 82. I've got a whole pile of Puffin Posts down here. I should do a whole video about them. But looking at it, it's amazing what was out. That you can see what was out each quarter. There's a Paul Zindel book, The Pigman's Legacy. I don't know if that's a sequel. I think that's a sequel. The House That Moved by David Rees. Now that rings a bell. David Rees, of course, was a gay writer who wrote In the Tent, which I read in about 1982. Empty World by John Christopher, which is one of the great post-apocalyptic stories about 3 kids let loose in a London that has nobody in it. And of course, the first thing they do is go up and down Oxford Street and ransack all the fancy shops and run about in fancy clothes, nicking stuff from Selfridges. And Anne of the Island, one of the L.M. Montgomery books. Yeah, Puffin Post is great, and I wish I'd been a member collecting these at the time. I just didn't. It wasn't something I read the books, but I didn't actually join the club. I don't know why. This is In the Red, issue 10. Now, it was a literary magazine published out of, I think, the university, John Moores University in Liverpool. And this must have been, I don't know when, early 2000s. And I think there's an interview with me. I'd been there to give a talk. And so it must have been like 2010 because we're talking about the Green Carnation Prize. Wow. That's just funny. And I guess it's nice. It was nice to, to see students making such a glossy and fantastic magazine. You end up with these things in your archive years and years later, and all these people will have gone on to do different things. They take up space though. I do have boxes of stuff. This treasury of birds. When I was a kid, I used to love stuff about birds. We did a project at school, and for some reason, bird books uh, fascinated me. The photography and just the details. There must be some kind of collecting instinct. I don't know. Collecting details, collecting facts. This was I treasured this, and I think this isn't my copy. I think I rebought it. There's a few factual books that I've kind of refound in later years. Um, and so I've got this collection of bird books, dinosaur books, animal books that I don't use, but I'm not somebody who uses that stuff now or looks at birds or goes on nature things, rambles or anything. It's just nice to have the books that I had as a kid, but I wonder if I'm letting them take up too much room. Now, these are the Doctor Who storybooks from 2008, 9 and 10. These were it's two copies of that. These were a version of the Doctor Who annual, which had ran for all those years between 64 and 84. And Panini, who did the Doctor Who magazine, did this. They're very, very well done. They're very well produced and illustrated, often in a kind of slightly pastiche style to look like the annuals of old. Whoops, with text running like that and the pictures sprawling over the pages, each one in different styles. And what was great about this was that they had the writers from the telly on the back. Those are kind of the writers who wrote the TV episodes, which is very unusual for an annual. Yeah, everybody there is either a TV writer or somebody inside a Dalek who also writes, or me. I've got stories in each of these, which was nice. It was nice to be included. I can't think what they were. Zombie Motel was my story in 2008, which was quite camp, I think, oddly enough. Quite gory, and where is it? Here. Yeah. It was a riff on Crossroads and the Crossroads Motel. And then 2009 was this one. Whoops. I don't know if these are rare or if they're still in circulation or what, really. In this one, I had a story called Hello Children Everywhere, which was about a kind of evil version of Enid Blyton and Noddy. They were long stories. They were 5,000 or 6,000 words. And yeah, happy days, really, in some ways, to be part of that whole kind of thing that was going on with Doctor Who. Not much, but slightly attached to it. Knock Knock was my story in this. It was illustrated by Adrian Salmon. And it was in kind of Edwardian upstairs, downstairs world. And it was about doors, sentient doors that chased people and flung themselves open to other dimensions and drew people into them to kidnap them, which I still think is a story I need to expand. Some of these people writing for these, of course, expanded their stories into actual TV episodes. And when you got the letter commissioning, it said, "Don't think you've wasted an idea," quotes, "wasted an idea by writing them for the annual." And people like Stephen Moffat went on to develop a story from one of these into Blink, for example. So, write the story and you might develop it for the telly at some point. They never asked me though. I didn't get my sentient door story on the telly, oddly enough. Right, I better stop. That's on 25 minutes. That's way too long. I'm halfway down one pile of books. I've got oh, more, if you can see, more that I'm keeping than I'm considering getting rid of. But that's just life, isn't it? I'm going to stop and maybe do some more of this tomorrow. Okay, see you soon.